Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we continue to discuss about the Eightfold Paths. The third one, the right speech. We have discussed about the right understanding, right views, uh, right intentions. That's what we need to have in our mind, and those kind of right thoughts and right understanding will affect to how we communicate with other people orderly. And we discussed last time what as a Buddhist, we need to tell the truth most of times. We need to stay away from lying. We need to stay away from gossiping. And today we continue to discuss about one of the most um, harmful speech that we need to stay away is the hate speech. That means whenever we say something that creates some type of anger or hatred toward other people. And of course, this type of hate speech is prevalent in our society nowadays because of all kind of problems that people deal with uh, in this diversity culture. So basically, uh, his speech is defined as a biased, motivated, hostile, malicious speech that a person or group of people because of their attributes innate characteristics. Uh, so it expresses discriminatory, intimidating, intimidating disapproval, or prejudice attitude toward others, including gender, race, relations, ethnicity, color, national origin, disability, or sexual orientation. So hate speech is so harmful, and it is intended to ensure dehumanize, harass, intimidate, or debase or degrade other people. That is belong to the definition of hate speech. That means if we focus on some people based on their race, their color of skin, their religions, and so forth, and if we try to be, harmonize them, we should try to harass them, intimidate them, so that's belong to the hate speech, and definitely with that type of mm, bad intention, if we have some prejudice or hostile statements toward those people, so it mm, uh, include in this type of hate speech. So that's we need to stay away. Otherwise, it may inflict uh, or be harmful to the people that we address, that we talk to them, and it may become uh, an act of violence vocally. So that's why we need to recognize how harmful uh, is the hate speech in the content, the tone, the context, the targets, potential implication, and intention. So of course, if based upon race, sex, discrimination, uh, religion, and so forth, that's going to the categories of this type of hate speech that create the conflicts among myself and others. And definitely, if we look around, because there's all kind of bias, all kind of misunderstanding. That's why this type of hate speech is prevalent in our daily life, in the media, in the TV, radio, internet, in politics, in governmental structure, institution, in school, in the form of bully, on social side. Sometimes this kind of hate speech may create what we call hate crimes. That's a great crimes based on the hate, uh, hatred toward other people. So it's so harmful for ourselves and others, and that's why we need to recognize us. And mm, especially nowadays, this type of hate speech uh, is manifested uh, virtually, uh, like on the website, on the social medias, blog medias, emails, games, uh, video clips, and so forth. So this kind of speech is so uh, prevalent that we need to be careful. It may uh, have strong impact, especially on the young people, because it may create the patterns for them to create and to bring some kind of conflict with each other, to have emotional risk. So some of them may be victims of those type of hate speech. Uh, yeah, that can bring the social harm, physical harm, emotional or psychological harm to others. And sometimes this may bring uh, to the problem of suicidal, especially for the young people, if they don't know or if they don't have the skill to handle those kind of speech. So let me show you some video clips that may be related with this hate speech that's so harmful and negative. And here the clip just talk about identifying hate speech, domestic terrorism in the digital age.
From these shootings, loud noises now causing panics across the country, with domestic terrorism an active shooter now in terms that are front and center in any town America.
Team 12's Mike Gonzalez is live in the Alert Center tonight. And Mike, you spoke with a world-renowned expert who is profiling terrorism studies. He actually says the digital age has really been a breeding ground for these people.
Hey, good evening, Mark and Trent. Yeah, it sure has become that. Sites like 8chan, Facebook, even Twitter have given these people a forum for hate. In the case of the young man who perpetrated the El Paso massacre, he posted to 8chan just 8 minutes before his crime. With a stroke of a keyboard, messages of hate have no boundaries. Dr. Richard Bloom is a former intelligence officer with the U.S. government. He's now the Director of Terrorism, Intelligence, and Security Studies at Embry-Riddle University in Prescott. Dr. Bloom says hate speech, domestic terrorism, and the fight for white supremacy has been around since the late 1800s, but these times are new.
The only thing that's different is whether ideology is political or religious, of what kind, how much might involve emotional or mental disorder, in what kind. And then there are other reasons too when you engage in a psychological autopsy for a particular case.
20 minutes before the El Paso shooting, the 21-year-old alleged triggerman posted a 4-page anti-immigrant manifesto to the website 8chan. It's the third time the site has been used before a mass shooting in the past year. Dr. Bloom says catching mass murderers before they commit the crime can be nearly impossible for law enforcement.
An individual who's perfectly okay at one point in time may not be at another. So the whole issue is, how do we try to monitor that change? Even if an individual is physically isolated, psychologically they're thinking about all kinds of people, I mean, within their minds, and certainly they're interacting via social media, via imagination, via fantasy with all kinds of people. So an individual might look alone, but they're really acting with a lot of people in their context.
And Dr. Bloom adds, even if law enforcement focuses on domestic terrorism, the problem is it's really a global and international problem, because oftentimes we all know the influence comes from overseas. And we also know devices like phones allow everyone to connect anytime, anywhere. Mark.
So you see, in this video clips, this murders before he commits his crimes, he spread that type of hate speech on the internet, on the 8chan, and that is still hard for the law enforcement people to catch these murders, because now they can use any kind of social media platforms like Twitter's, YouTube, 8chan, and so forth, to spread that kind of hate message. And again, they may have influence from overseas, anywhere, any place, with this kind of digital advancement. And so let me show you another video clips. How can we define this free speech instead of hate speech?
Next, as the residents of Garland, Texas continue to move past the shooting that happened last week, our own Jeannie Nguyen talks to you about your thoughts on free speech and hate speech.
It's a special segment we like to call Say What, Jeannie?
Well, that's right, guys. Now, as we continue to talk about our free speech rights, another topic comes up: hate speech. On this week's Say What, we take a look and see if this should also be a protected right.
I don't think hate and anything, I don't think hate should ever be protected, but others disagree.
It should kind of be protected, just so there's no limits. Because once you limit it in any way, you're going to have problems.
And some take a more realistic approach. You do have the right to say what we want. That is a freedom that we do have. But with technology, everything being globally connected, internet virtually connected, there are going to be repercussions. Consequences are not. Free speech expert Butler Kane of West Texas A&M University says it's best to keep the language of the law more general and to avoid limiting any type of speech.
I think it's actually a little bit beneficial that something isn't specifically written in the Constitution, because then it's exceedingly difficult to change it if it needs to change.
And we want to know if you think hate speech should also be a protected right. Tell us by sounding off with your comments on our ABC7 Amarillo Facebook page, or tweet us at ABC7 Amarillo using the hashtag #SocialSoundOff. Anthony?
Okay, so here we discuss about how we define free speech and hate speech. So first, according to the Constitution, we have the right to say things that we want to, but in meantime, when it relates to hate speech, that is so harmful and negative toward other people. We need to be careful that we jump in the boundaries of crimes, great crimes. So that's why no matter what we say, we need to be careful how we express ourselves verbally to see whether this is beneficial for ourselves and others, or is harmful to other people. We need to be careful. Otherwise, if we just say, "Oh, I have my right to say whatever I want to say," but still, when we express ourselves in a negative way, in a harmful way, it will create all kinds of conflicts and problems between ourselves and others. So that's why, as a Buddhist, the Buddha said that we need to have compassionate speech, pleasant speech or understandable speech, so that at least the other people would accept what we try to explain to them. So that's why, especially in this modern age, with the social medias that spread everywhere around the clubs, that one idea can be influenced uh, easily. And other, especially the young people, can be influenced by any kind of message, whether it's positive or negative. This is so important that as Buddhists, we need to sort out, filter out those type of harmful speech that make great conflicts and problems between us and others. So basically, it's better to have compassionate speech or pleasant speech that everyone want to hear. No one want to be condemned. No one want to be criticized or slandered. So that's why if we understand that kind of mentality, we're not supposed to say something that may be offended toward other people, even we know we are protected by Constitution that let's see free speech, but we need to be careful whichever things that we express ourselves vocally. And so again, in Buddhism, as long as we have compassionate thought, loving kindness thought, uh, and understandable thoughts, we would not have the hate speech or negative speech uh, that may be offended toward other people. So that is why, as long as we maintain our compassion, our loving kindness, and so forth. This is for us to express ourselves in compassionate way, in the understandable way, instead of having hate speech or harmful speech that may be harmful to ourselves and others. So that is what the Buddhists need to restrains ourselves. Um, so no matter what kind of speech, we need to remember that we're not supposed to harm others with that intention. Definitely, our verbal expression will be proper and will be delightful and beneficial. And the next items I want to talk is defamation. That is in, in this kind of right speech that Buddha reminds us to stay away. What we call defamation, and underneath of this title is slander, libel, mm, defamation, criminal, civil libel per se, libel per quote. There's actual damage, special damage, punitive damage. So basically, when we say something that may be harmful to others, let's go slander. There has been the spoken words that falsely accuse other people reputation, um, that that dehumanize um, other people. And when we talk about libel, it is real defamation of others, especially in the case of public officials and public figures. They somehow um, mm, as long as we put uh, our expressions in writing, that's called libel. And if we falsely accuse someone else that may harm their reputation. That's for libel. And if we just express ourselves verbally, that's for slander. Uh, and um, and another one what we call the seditious libel. That means defaming, coercion, advocating of overthrow the government. That is another type. So basically, uh, in the court uh, room, the plaintiff must be living at the times of the defamation when someone brought the case to the judge. That means they have the lawsuit about defamation. So the plaintiff must be living at the time of defamation, but not necessarily at the time of the lawsuit. The businesses organization can also sue for defamation, but the government official may not. The elements of the defamation includes defamatory language, um, is about some people and entities, some publication to the third party that may bring the damage to the one that's been slander. Mm. And sometimes it may uh, bring the problems that a statement that someone committed crimes, especially if that victim has not done anything wrong, but somehow uh, other people may slander them or may have that type of defamatory statement that person doing crimes or their occupation. That means if they have the intention to degrade other people skill, products, uh, um, experience in the family history uh, manners. So in business, anything that's about the business that mm, may uh, raise the problems to that business to have poor productions, the service um, uh, because of defamation. So basically, if someone try to uh, degrade uh, the business, let's say that business have committed some kind of crimes or um, some kind of criminal activities without any kind of evidence, such as the late to defamation too. Mm. So all the statement that may be defamatory, and the statement about anything that can be defamatory depends on the context. Like it include the personal characteristics, the habit, uh, uh, and so forth. Let's say if someone try to dehumanize other people, as they say, oh, that person is a criminal, that person um, uh, cheaters and so forth. So the person has some kind of mental questions. So those the example of the inflammatory statement that may be brought to the court with the lawsuit. And some statements that are not usually defamatory, like the statement that relate to the political views, race, religion, but sometimes under certain circumstances, it may be defamatory. So basically, this kind of defamatory statement can subject someone to the ridiculous of a making fun of that person. Uh, uh, of course, there's some exception that if the statement is so ambiguous, that can be understood in different ways. So, like the photos, cartoon, and so forth. So, you have to be careful how uh, uh, we say things, and even if someone try to slander us, we need to be careful whether this is going to this kind of categories or not. Sometimes they just make fun, sometimes they just put some ambiguous statements, and then in photo or cartoon it may not be defamatory statement yet. So again, um, the problems in other elements of defamation is that it may affect to the victims that uh, has been slandered uh, because of their personalities, of their uh, characteristics, or how they do business and so forth. It may be harmful, uh, uh, maybe manageable, raise some kind of problems with other people. For example, if we I say that okay, that person is criminals, that has killed someone else without any evidence. That's what we say. We have this type of defamatory statement toward that person, and if it's turned out not to be true, we would create a lot of problems with authorities. Hmm. Uh, and again, any false statement that we label other people, business, entities, that's may fall into the categories of defamatory statement. And in order to uh, defend ourselves against the defamation, we need to have a good faith. We need to have fair comments about other people. We need to have proper justification and proper views about other people. Um, so no matter what happens, we need to abide the laws that not need to bring any kind of lawsuit. Um, even if someone try to put us down, to slander us, we need to be careful before thinking about having the lawsuit bring them to the courts. We need to recognize the consequence uh, of having that type of lawsuit if they try to defame us. On the other hand, we have to be careful how we say, how we express ourselves, and how we make comment on other people. Otherwise, this may be harmful to them. So that's why we need to be careful how we frame others, how we comment on others. So let me show you another video clips. There's many uh, lawsuits that have brought to the court because of this kind of problems. Okay. And here is talk about the Washington Post settled $250 million lawsuit filed by Nick Salmon.
Senator Nicholas Salmon says he has settled a lawsuit with the Washington Post. The announcement came this morning in a tweet. The Salmon family suit sought $250 million. It followed the spread of a viral video showing the team interacting with Native American activists in Washington, D.C. at the March for Life in 2019.
Yeah. So this young man somehow he together with his classmate went to Washington D.C. and somehow there's many newspaper outlet poke frame him in the negative way, and so that's why he brought the lawsuit, and that's why later on the Washington Post settled out with him about $250 million. And let's us listen to some experts in the law of the information law, libel and slander, so that we can learn more.
We've all heard the terms libel or slander. They're often thrown around when people are criticized, but what do they actually mean and when is it illegal? Tom Stein is joining us today to explain defamation law. Very interesting, Tom.
Yeah, we've been hearing a lot more about it, and you study it in law school. I did, and I found it really interesting, really for this reason, because it's really where civil litigation and the First Amendment collide. Okay, right? It really gets at this question of how much rights do I have to say, write down certain things about someone else, and how much rights do they have to say, well, wait a minute, that goes too far. Yeah. So this falls under the broad category of defamation. Okay. And we hear the words libel and slander. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, but they actually mean two different things in the form of how they're communicated. Libel, easy to think is printed material. Okay. Slander is spoken. There you go. Okay. But they both are forms of defamation. So what is defamation? Well, it's taking a false or defamatory statement, publishing it. Now that can mean either speaking it to someone else or writing it down. Okay. It doesn't mean publishing it in the New York Times. Okay. Doing so in a way that is at least negligent, meaning not using reasonable care, and that in the doing of that, it causes some sort of harm to the other person. That's business. My business no longer sells pizzas. That's the perfect example. You said this thing about me, and now my business has been harmed. Well, over time, the courts have struggled with, well, how do we treat public figures, right? Should we treat them the same, or do we treat them differently because we want to encourage debate about public figures? Well, public figures have less protection. In other words, for a public figure to show that they have a defamation claim, they have to show that the statements were made with knowledge that they were false, or with reckless disregard about whether they were true. So public figures have a higher burden. Interesting. Which gets to another point. The defense to defamation is the truth. Yeah. If you say something about someone that is actually true, then it is by definition not defamatory. There you go. So in these cases involving defamation, there's so much litigation about what the truth is, because if it is true, then it isn't defamatory. Sure. If you have one of these claims, if you're considering one of these claims, remember that we have a very unforgiving statute of limitations in Michigan of 1 year. Oh, wow. Yeah, 1 year. Okay. Really unusual. So these are tricky cases, and proving the elements is harder than it seems than what you said in your intro, which is just to say I was defamed. Yeah, sure. There's a bit more to it. 10-second question. Someone throws something up on like a social media. Is that considered printed, or is that libel? That would be considered printed. Yeah, that would be considered published. Okay. Yeah, and then it would be the question of, well, was it true? Yeah. Was it negligently placed there? Yeah. And did the victim sustain some form of damage? That's the big key right there. Good stuff. Where do people find it? You can find us online at www.sinusgramus.com. Give us a call in West Michigan.
Okay, here you see that this attorney, he mentioned that these two forms of defamation, libel just mean they print out the materials to make the full statement about some people, some business, some entities that cause the harm to those people abuses and the slander that's been the spoken word that falsely accuse those people abuses. It's like if we claim that abuses uh, cheat the customer without any kind of proof or evidence, and definitely that abuses could bring the lawsuit uh, and bring us to the courts. And but if we say the truth, and according to that attorneys, if we uh, recognize the problems and tell the truth, um, uh, there's nothing for us to be afraid of. But for the public figures, they less protected probably because of the politics. In politics, they have all kind of conflicts and findings, arguments. And so that's why somehow this kind of law have less protection for public figures. So no matter what happened, if we say the truth, there's nothing for us to be afraid of. But if we frame other people in the false way, uh, uh, that we bring ourselves the problems. So again, no matter what happened, with the good intention to help other people, not to harm, we need to be careful how we say uh, to other people, how we mm, mm, make comment on other people. Otherwise, we may create the problems for ourselves and others. So basically, the elements of the libel or slander includes the defamatory statement, the false statement in the publication, in identification of a person or business. We may say something that's mm, not true, that bring harm to that person. That person may lose interest or lose uh, friends or the business may have poor production, or they may lose their customer. That is uh, the problems of the libel or slander. So again, this kind of problem we need to be careful. Uh, Otherwise, it's so harmful for ourselves and others. So no matter what, we need to stay away from exciting hatred, contempt, make fun with other, to other people. Um, we need to recognize uh, the harmfulness of this type of slanderings libel because may affect to the reputation of a person or business. So with that type of understanding, we need to be careful how we say things, how we make the statement or comment about other people. As long as we tell the truth, nothing for us to worry about. But if we make the full statement with uh, full knowledge, and that was false, with uh, uh, the negative intention to harm others, if we put that type of false statement, uh, uh, definitely we bring the harms to ourselves and others, and we have to pay for the price later on too. So no matter what, if it's false, we're not supposed to slant others. We're not supposed to make up the story to make the full statement about anyone else or any business or any entities. So as a Buddhist, we need to be careful how we communicate with other people, how we view our relationship with other people. So no matter what, whether it's in print, in oral expression, we need to be truthful. Uh, Otherwise, if we create this kind of problems, if we publish the full statement about other people, if we even say something that's untruthful about other people, abuses, again, we have to pay for the price later on. No matter what, in general, we need to stay away from those false statements. We need to stay away from those defamatory statements or publish some false uh, uh, articles, statement about other people. So otherwise, we need to pay the price accordingly. So again, as a Buddhist, we need to tell the truth. We need to have the fair judgment or criticism toward other people. We need to respect other privacy instead of making some kind of false statement without any kind of evidence. So basically, the two can be uh, last long. Otherwise, if we make the full statement, we would bring the disaster to ourselves and others. If we want to say something about others, at first we need to know their characteristics and personality. If we just make some kind of assumption about them, it may influence to this type of categories. Or if we want to print anything about them, we need to have their consent or permission. Otherwise, we may bring ourselves to the problems, and especially for the journalists, they need to have the fair mind. That means if they have the prejudiced thought or, or statement about others, that is easy for them to fall into this kind of categories. And like we just saw the video clips that the Washington Post paid $250 million because of this kind of defamatory statement about that young man. So no matter what, we need to have the fair comment on other people, whether they right or wrong, whether uh, um, they came from different backgrounds, regardless of their race, nationality, and so forth. So we will be more safe. If we say something that not true, especially if we print something in the form of email, uh, um, yes, in Twitter and so forth. We may pay more the price later on with that kind of prejudice statement about the view about people. Even we have the freedom to say, even we have the freedom to write anything, but we need to respect other people's rights, not to dehumanize, put down other people. So again, in both ethical and legal responsibility, we need to recognize the harmfulness of the defamatory statement or the full statement that we may have toward other people. And so again, we need to double check the fact that we put down there. We need to practice the fairness so that people could recognize the problems and be respectful toward ourselves and others. Okay, so time is up. Let me end today, and next time we can discuss further about this kind of problems. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. We'll see you then.